Students, in lesson 6.3, we will be estimating fractions, sums, and differences. And underneath the word sum, I'm going to put a plus sign, and under difference, I'm going to put a subtraction sign, just to remind myself of the different operations that I'm going to have to use in this lesson. So our essential question is, how can you make reasonable estimates of fractions, sums, and differences? We're going to start with the real world and lock the problem. Kimberly will be riding her bike to school this year. The distance from her house to the end of the street is 1/6 of a mile. The distance from the end of the street to the school is 3/8 of a mile. About how far is Kimberly's house from school? So you can use fraction benchmarks to use reasonable estimates by rounding fractions to 0, 1, half, or 1. So the benchmark fractions, make sure that you write them down, are 0, a half, or 1. These are numbers that we're pretty familiar with that we can come back to. So what we're going to do is we are going to with our first way, use a number line. So we are going to add up the distances. So we have a 6 plus an 8. In our previous lessons, we know that when the fractions denominators are not the same, we can't actually add them. So for step 1, we are going to place 1/6 on the number line. We use our benchmark numbers of 0, a half, and 1 to make a number line. And if our fraction is a 6, boys and girls, so if you look at this number line, we use 1 half and 0 to break it up, and we know that 6 means that we're going to have 6 pieces. So if we look here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. So that's why we have 6 little spaces in between our dash marks, which we call graduations. So we see that the fraction 1/6, and let me change the color on this. We see that the fraction 1/6 is between 0 and a half. So the fraction 1/6 is closer to the benchmark of 0. So we're going to round it to 0. Now we're going to go on to step 2. Place the point 3/8 on the number line. So we have to make a new number line. Again, we use the benchmarks 0, half, 1, but this time it's going to have 8 graduations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the reason why there's 8 is because there are 8/8 inside of one hole. So we look for 3/8 and we plot it on the number line. So we see that the fraction 3/8 is between 0 and a half. So we see that the fraction 3/8, it's a lot closer to a half. It's only one space away over from a half. So we're going to round it to being a half. So now we're going to add our fractions. 1/6 we rounded to 0, and 3/8 we rounded to half. So 0 plus a half is 1/2. So Kimberly's house is about half a mile from school. Boys and girls, just remember, this is just a reasonable estimate. It's not the actual sum. So another way we can use mental math. Make sure that you note on the side, boys and girls, here where it says remember, a fraction with the same numerator and denominator, such as 2 halves, 5/5, 2/12, or 96/99 is 96/99 equal to 1. Because when we see 2 halves, boys and girls, we really know that this is saying 2 divided by 2, which is 1, 5/5, which is really 5 divided by 5, which is equal to 1, and so on. You can compare the numerators and the denominators to round the fraction to a reasonable estimate. So when we look at this, think to yourself, boys and girls, is numerator about the same as the denominator? Well, 9 is very close to 10, which would give us 1, so we're going to round that to 1. Now let's think 5/8. 4/8 is halfway. So this, if we think about this, we have 5/8. We know that we're closer to 4/8, which is equivalent to a half. So we would round 5/8 to being a half. Again, that's because 5 is closer to 4, and 4/8 is an equivalent fraction to a half. So we're going to round the fraction to being 1/2. So next step, what we do is we subtract. We take 9/8, which we round to 1 whole, and 5/8, which we round to a half. 1 minus 1/2 would be 1/2. So 9/10 minus 5/8 is about 1/2. Remember, boys and girls, that word about is just prompting us to remember it is about that amount. So boys and girls, we're going to try the second method, which I think is a little bit more difficult. If we look at 7/8, 7/8 is really close to our denominator of 8. So I'm going to round 7/8 to be 1 whole. And then I'm going to add 1 whole plus 2, which would give me 3. If I look at 2/5, boys and girls, we know that 2/5 is about halfway to so keep in mind, boys and girls, we had 1 whole, and the 1 whole we rounded from the 7/8 because 7 is really close to the denominator, and when we get 8/8, it's getting 1. So we're going to have, say, 3. So now 3 minus 2/5. Now 2/5, boys and girls, is closer to a half, so we're going to round that to being a half. If you take 3 and you subtract a half, you would get the answer of 2 1/2. Because if you add a half to a half, you would get a whole, which would get us 3. Now let's look at this next problem, boys and girls. 8/9 is really close to 9/9, so we could round this 8/9 to being 1 whole, and we're going to add that 1 whole to the original 1, which we have 2. Now, we know that the 8/10 is really close to 10/10, so we're going to round that to being 1 whole. And if we add the 1 to the 4 that was already there, we get 5. Now we just add our 2 whole numbers together. 5 plus 2 is 7. So now, boys and girls, in this lesson, it's really important that you know how to draw the number line, and it's also really important that you know how to use mental math to help you see the relationship between rounding decimals. You'll have to do both in this lesson for today.